Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are. Welcome to the Sporting Life Infogol FA Cup special. That's right, Chelsea taking on Liverpool at Wembley this coming Saturday. And I'm joined by Sporting Life Infogol's Jake Osgathorpe and Liam Kelly to delve in to the weekend's action. Chaps, thanks for joining me. Should be an exciting FA Cup final, but before we get into talking about the game itself, let's talk about Liverpool's quadruple chances. Obviously, the FA Cup is key to part of that quadruple. Jake, can they do it?
It's possible, the quadruple, but they do need a lot of help now after the last week of Premier League action. Not only have they dropped points to Spurs, but the goal difference swing that Manchester City have got now over them makes it really, really unlikely. We actually give them only a 4.9% chance of winning the Premier League title. The FA Cup, on the other hand, and the Champions League, we give them around a 65% chance of winning both. So quadruple looks unlikely, but the chances of Liverpool ending up with no more trophies is very slim.
What about treble?
Treble's definitely doable. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we've seen that they're really, really strong as a cup team. They've already obviously won the Carabao Cup against Chelsea with a 0-0 draw, and they've just got everything that you'd want, really, and a lot of strength in depth, which is massive, and it has helped them fight on all fronts. The fact that they've got 2 and 3 people to fill different roles if certain players get injured or if they want to rest and rotate. And yeah, I think that they're rightly favourites to win both the FA Cup and the Champions League.
Okay, we can see there on screen now the Infogol percent chance of multiple Liverpool trophies. They're favourites there to get that FA Cup, Liam. How likely do you think then they are to get the quadruple, treble, multiple trophies?
I think the quadruple's basically gone. I mean, it was a long shot even a couple of weeks ago, to be honest. I mean, I think we had it at 40% our highest.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty bored of talking about it, to be honest.
That's good for this video.
I mean, we all know, we've talked about it for weeks now. I think it's got to them a bit with their performances over the last few weeks as well, but we all know how good they are, and it's just every week it's been constant quadruple, and now it's starting to show on them. I think they will get a treble, to be honest. It might be, I can't remember what year it was, but they won 3 cups.
It was like 2001, wasn't it?
Yeah, I can remember the Alaves game, which was unbelievable, but
They weren't proper trophies them though, really. They were all like the secondary
Yeah.
League Cup. Like, what was it? UEFA
Cup and FA Cup.
Careful, Middlesbrough got the final UEFA Cup. It's very important.
Yeah, well, Bradford City got to the final of the League Cup. I've been told not to speak about that anymore.
Still someone has to bring it up.
Yeah. So the Infogol data is to be trusted, and you think the Premier League title's pretty much gone, but the treble is still looking fairly likely for Liverpool. That's how we conclude that section of this.
Definitely, yeah. We're looking around a 42% chance based on the Infogol model that they win both the Champions League and the FA Cup. Both could be tough games. Obviously, Chelsea, third best team in the Premier League by a long way based on all the underlying numbers. Real Madrid, while they have ridden the luck massively in the Champions League, all the ties that they've come through every single round, they've been fortunate based on expected goals. They've played in spurts and moments, turning up for 20 minutes here and there and blowing teams away. There's another team that actually plays in red is also in the final that play like that, and that's Liverpool. They play in those spurts and they can really blow teams away within 10-15 minute periods. So it'll be a fascinating final, but yeah, I think if Liverpool come away with just the Carabao Cup from this season, then you'd have to say, you'd put it borderline failure, wouldn't you?
Well, I guess you could say the reason we're being almost dismissive of Chelsea possibly winning the FA Cup is because of the form they're in. They seem to be in a terrible run. They had the mid-season wobble, but this seems to be a lot worse. Liam, how do you explain it?
I actually don't think it's as bad as people think. It must
be contradictory, doesn't it, Liam? I love it. I absolutely love it.
I mean, I think we've sort of unfair at the start of the season where we had them as title challengers, really. I think it was like, I'd look at it was 0.7 expected goals against that they had against them last season when Tuchel came in. There's no way you can keep that up.
Yeah.
And like the defensive injuries that they've had this year has really, really harmed them more than other teams, I would say. And just to keep that level up is basically impossible. So we would expect like that to come down a bit. It's probably been a bit worse than they would like, but they're comfortably the third best team in the country, and that's where they're going to finish. Like I say, they're probably a bit far behind than they'd like to be, but I think it's a bit overblown. And with one-off games like this, it's completely different. Liverpool are probably set up better to be this one-off team rather than this like monotonous Man City winning machine. But that'll be better for the league. But one-off game, Chelsea are more than in it. I think the drop-off might be a bit overblown, I would say.
Okay, Jake, we can see on screen now Chelsea's roaming form. Just talk us through this.
Well, it perfectly demonstrates the season that they've had. Like, they started the season exceptionally well. Don't forget they were top of the league, not so, I think maybe 7 or 8 games into the season they were top of the league. And they were backed into second favourites ahead of Liverpool to win the title. And for whatever reason, there's some off-field issues. There's been a lot of injuries, as Liam said. And I think the main reason why they have seen a dip is that they were outperforming their expected goals for. So they were scoring more than would be expected based on the chances created. And that's not a sustainable way of playing. And when you've got teams like Liverpool and Manchester City that are racking up around 2.3, 2.4 expected goals for per game, and Chelsea around 1.8, then the margin for error for Chelsea is a lot smaller than Liverpool on a game-to-game basis, and that's ultimately why they fell away. And across the Christmas period, they had a real lull. The attacking process dipped massively, but we are starting to see a bit of an increase towards the back end of the season. At that graphic, as it showed, blue is good, orange is bad, and the bigger the gap between the two, the better the team. And Chelsea's is starting to widen slightly towards the end of the season, so they are getting a little bit better. But recently, the defensive performances have been a bit of an issue. I think they've conceded 17 times in the last 11 matches. They've obviously conceded 4 against Brentford.
But that can't be a coincidence then that ties in with Reece James being missing from the team, who's been a key, not only attacking player but defender as well. Yeah,
definitely. There's quite a few that you could label. Reece James obviously a massive one. Christensen's been out for a while. He's obviously signed a pre-contract agreement with I think it's Barcelona, so he's off. His mind might be elsewhere. Same can be said for Rudiger now, who's going to be heading to Real Madrid. Midfield issues. Kante's been out for long stretches. Jorginho hasn't found the form that he had last season. A lot of issues, and obviously the main one is that they've not really found a formula that's consistently worked up front. A Tuchel team is one that's very well organised and well drilled. But recently they've been really easy to play against, and that's a massive concern. Admittedly, when it comes to these one-off games, he usually gets it right. I think he is one of the best, if not the best, tactical one-game manager in the entire world. I think he's really, really good. And there's a reason that Chelsea have made it to successive finals. I mean, it was Champions League final last season, FA Cup final last season, Carabao Cup final this season, FA Cup final this. 4 out of 5 tournaments that they've entered with Tuchel as a manager, he's got them to the final, and I think that when it comes to knockout football, he's brilliant.
And you think that the missing players, the key players that were missing returning, could be in Chelsea? Well, it's bound to be in Chelsea's favour this coming final.
It'll help them, without doubt, yeah. There's some question marks over Kovacic, though, which is a bit of an issue, because he has been really, really good for them this season in terms of just being one player to sort of support the front line. If you've got Kante or Jorginho playing alongside him, they tend to play a little bit more reserved, whereas Kovacic is the one that advances the ball through passes or dribbles, gets them up the pitch quickly. If he's missing, that is a bit of a blow. But other than that, I think we've seen Lukaku obviously scored a couple of goals last week against Wolves. He got one in midweek against Leeds as well. Does he come into the frame? Poses a bit of a different threat to the likes of Van Dijk, Matip, or do you stick with the likes of Werner and Havertz, who are a bit more dynamic and a bit more elusive? Particularly, I would absolutely play Werner in this game. If you're going to play in the usual 3-4-3 or 3-5-2, Werner loves that inside left channel, which is exactly behind Trent Alexander-Arnold, who will likely vacate that position, won't he?
Yeah, I think that's the Tuchel have his microscope out and he's just there. That's where I want to attack.
Target Trent.
Yeah, I think that's
not the biggest
best
fan
way
of
to
Trent,
win.
Liam, are you?
Not his defending. Like Klopp, no matter what Klopp says, Klopp will, and fair play to him, he's going to defend his player and say that he's a great defender and people don't know what they're talking about, but he's one of the worst 1v1 defenders in the Premier League, and it's fine for the majority of the games, like everything just going forward. It far more eclipses the stuff that he's getting done for at the back, but in, like I say, in these one-off games and you've got Werner against you, they're going to hone in on that, and I think that's the main worry for Liverpool, that right-hand side. And
they got Mason Mount perfect. As well. Mason Mount likes drifting into that left-hand side column. And
he's had his best. I would say Mason Mount had his best season.
I'd agree.
Even though I think people are a bit down on him this season, but I think he's had his production-wise, it's his best season, and you could see him against Leeds in midweek. There's probably one of the better games he's played for the last few months. If he's rounding into form and he's, like I say, he's drifting into that channel as well. It's a big problem for Liverpool.
On the subject of key midfielders, Liverpool do have a key midfielder missing, a midfielder who looks to have been key to a lot of Liverpool's success this season, Fabinho. How big of a miss is he for them?
I think it's a big miss because he's their only sort of out-and-out defensive-minded midfielder whose job is to win the ball back and play the simple pass. Obviously, he does a lot more than that. I've simplified it very, very briefly there, but yeah, I was just really interested in looking at the stats. That he's not started 19 games this season for Liverpool. They're actually unbeaten across those 19. They've won 15, drawn 4. Including games away at Atletico Madrid, Manchester City, Manchester United and Tottenham. So he's missed some key games, some big games, and it hasn't really affected them. And again, just going back to the previous point I made, the squad depth that they have means that even if you have a couple of key players missing, it's not having the massive impact that it would have had in yesteryear, because you've got the likes of Keita. Henderson's not played a lot of football recently, so he'll be fresh for this if he needs to be called upon. You've got Thiago. This is the first time Thiago is going to be playing against a Tuchel Chelsea team. Real sort of ace in the pack there potentially for Liverpool, something that Chelsea haven't had to deal with when they played Liverpool before. You've got Harvey Elliott, you've got Curtis Jones. There's loads of options there for Liverpool to sort of fill that void, and they have done supremely well this season so far. So I don't think his absence is going to be a huge miss, but he does provide a bit of physicality in there that might need to be filled by somebody else.
Okay, Liam, going to come to you first. Your best bets for the FA Cup final this Saturday?
Just doubling down on the Trent Alexander-Arnold take.
I think the word's hate.
No, not so much. I'm not going that far. He's 6-5 to commit over 0.5 fouls with Unibet, and like I say, they're going to target him. It's their best. It's Chelsea's best chance of winning the game, I think. He's only had 12 fouls committed in the Premier League this season, but we've said already that these one-off games are one-off games. They don't play 38 games against Chelsea, especially with Werner getting at him. Alonso's, although he's probably one of the worst defenders as well. I wouldn't trust him. I wouldn't trust him to stop Trent Alexander going forward. Is basically what I mean. Yeah. But on the other end, he'll get forward and they'll test him if Mason Mount's drifting. So just to commit a foul, it can be something niggly. It's not something on the break. If Werner gets out, it's game over really. So he's going to have to foul him. So I think that's a great price, to be honest. I know, like I say, even if he's only committed 12 in the Premier League this season, it's completely different in the FA Cup final.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a great bet. I think like the game state will massively affect that either way. Like if Liverpool go in front and they sort of sit back a little bit, then players are going to be running towards him even more. And if the other way around and they're chasing the game, he's going to be high up the pitch. Just a little drag back and you get your foul straight up. So I do really like that bet.
I'll tell you what it is, great clickbait. I hope the producers are listening and put that in the title for the YouTube video. Right, Jake, your best bet.
So with all these really bad defenders on the pitch, I'm going to go with under 2.5 goals, which might not make a lot of sense, but what we do know is that when Chelsea do get to a cup final, it's very low scoring. And in fact, cup finals in general featuring English teams have been very low scoring. Obviously the Champions League last season was 1-0, the Europa League final with Man United was 1-1. Last season's FA Cup final 1-0, the Carabao Cup final 0-0. So, there are very few goals in these games. And Chelsea are one factor, but also I want to talk about Liverpool because their rolling XG chart is on there now, and you can sort of see, as I said before, the blue line is their attack, the orange line is the defence, and Liverpool's attack and defence, the gap between them is massive compared to Chelsea's, which shows that they've been much better over the course of the season. But their attacking line has just taken a bit of a nosedive over the last 5 or 6 games, and I thought it was interesting looking. Obviously, we're talking small samples, but across the last 6 matches, they've averaged 1.74 expected goals for per game, which is still, it's an above average, probably a top 4 level XG process. But in the 6 games prior to that, they averaged 2.77, so it's dropped by around 1 expected goal per game from a six game period. So a slight concern there, and that could be from anything to do with. It's probably more to do with the fact that they've had such a heavy workload. They've been playing weekend, midweek. So that, I think that's going to contribute. I think they'll have a bit of a struggle breaking Chelsea down. And then going back to Chelsea, when it comes to the meetings against the big teams this season, 7 of the 10 Premier League meetings against the big 6 have gone under 2.5 goals. And 4 of the last 5 meetings between Chelsea and Liverpool have also gone under 2.5. 3 of the 4 between Tuchel and Klopp with these two teams have gone under 2.5. So something that Tuchel likes to do is keep it very tight and controlled. And we saw that in the Carabao Cup final, didn't we, where Chelsea were basically sat really deep. Liverpool were trying to apply the pressure, couldn't create any decent chances to break them down. And I expect this to be something similar. So yeah, a few goals.
It's amazing, isn't it? Because for anybody else, that rolling form would be astounding when it just shows the levels that Liverpool are performing at, that we're able to criticise what is still a very, very respectable XG.
Yeah.
Right, lads, finally, in no more than one word, strictly one word, I'm being shouted at in my ear.
Yeah.
Who lifts the trophy? Jake?
Liverpool.
Liam?
Chelsea.
Oh, I love it. A bit of drama in the desk. Well, that is just about it for the Sporting Life Infogol FA Cup Best Bet Special. For more of this in a written, easily digestible form, head to sportinglife.com/football, or you can get the app in the App Store now.